What's up, everybody? Welcome to BioS3 Raw TV. This video is going to be a little bit different. I'm actually opening up my email, my Instagram right now. So I put up a post, regular Sunday stuff, on my Instagram today, and I actually got a person who asked a question. His name is Brian Danzy. He's a physician of addiction medicine, clinical chemistry. So he actually asked me on the post itself, which had nothing to do with addiction, but he just threw it up there since I just posted it just to interact. And his question was, just wondering if you don't mind answering, you obviously got/stayed sober for a long time now. What/how do you make that happen and keep your sobriety, even if you still think about it? Asking because I'm a physician who specializes in addiction, and I know your whole story. I truly find your whole story fascinating and have much respect. Keep your content coming. So Brian, this one's for you. Brian, was it David? Brian, it was Brian. Brian Danzy, sorry. So Brian, this one is for you, and the reason why I'm making this is, first of all, there was too much to type on an Instagram post. But second of all, when I went through rehab, we weren't presented with anybody that was like a speaker or anything like that that we saw had actually done it, had actually made it and been sober for a period of time and been successful. They never brought anybody like that in there. Matter of fact, we were told going through this rehab facility that we had like a less than 5% chance of getting clean, less than 1% chance of getting clean and staying clean, and then less than 1% of, I mean, it was the statistics were just absolutely against us. And I think that overwhelmed a lot of people when they got there. And I think that just that information being presented to us actually led us to, or I shouldn't say us because I've never had a relapse, but led many people to relapsing because there was no examples. Well, who's done it? You know, you'd hear maybe the counselor say, well, I know one guy that stayed clean, he had some relapse, but we never saw anybody. We never saw like anybody talk. And when I had a Holocaust survivor come to my actual class when I was a senior in high school, it made the Holocaust much more lifelike. It made it not just something in a book. It was in your face, and it was something that made it very real and in your face and raw and educational, and it had emotion behind it. Listening to that individual talk, Mr. Eichenbaum was his name. So that's why I'm making this video. And my hopes is that Brian will actually share this with his clients, his patients, and anybody that is going through drug addiction right now, or it doesn't even matter whether it's alcohol. Addiction is addiction. It's all the same triggers and mechanisms. But this is my story, okay? For some of you, this will be redundant. You know my story. But I, of course, was addicted to heroin. I've been clean for about 16 years now. I actually lost count because I don't care to count anymore. I don't see the point in it. I started out with some painkillers and things like that, some Vicodins and stuff like that, which just here and there. We had Percodans. We didn't have Percocets. We had Percodans. And that kind of transitioned into something called Nubain, which is a bodybuilding drug. It's an injectable morphine type drug. And you shoot it IV. It's like a very pharmaceutical heroin is kind of what it is. And that led from there into Oxycontins, and Oxycontin eventually to heroin. Now, as far as getting clean, I ran this lifestyle like everybody does. You know what I mean? It was like you were always broke. You were always trying to get your fix. I was a functional drug addict, which means I still went to work. I still went to the gym. I still did everything that I normally did, but I was on heroin. Like I had bouts of sickness pretty much every day, where until I got some kind of opiate, I couldn't move. I was laying in bed. I was vomiting. I was shaking. I was in pain. Like as soon as I got a Vicodin or two or a shot of heroin or whatever, then I could go about my day, and I worked. And I was actually married at the time, and my wife at the time was addicted to heroin also. And she also worked a full-time job. So we were both in the kind of like, I don't want to say undercover drug addicts, but we were both deeply, deeply involved in the drug underground, but we're totally functional at the same time. Now, people thought we were messed up based on what we were like before and what you saw us then. But I don't think many people had an idea of how deep that addiction went and what we were actually doing, like how bad it was. And one morning I woke up after we had done some really stupid stuff. What we were doing was there was a kind of a drive-through bank near our house. It was like one of those little things that didn't have people in it. It was just like a kiosk in the middle of a parking lot. You drive up, and my wife had actually deposited a check. And the check, when you deposit a check, it automatically makes $100 available, and then the check process and the rest of the money goes. So she was writing bogus checks, then cashing on the spot and getting the $100 out, and we were going to buy drugs. And I woke up one morning after we did that, and I said, there's no more. I can't do it. It was like Groundhog every day. I woke up sick. We were always scavenging, we were always out of money. I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's pretty much where you get to when you decide to go to rehab. Either you get in trouble, you're forced to go, or you get sick and tired of being sick and tired and you go. And I remember looking at her and saying, hey, I can't do this anymore. She was like, I don't want to quit. Like I actually had to turn around and walk away from my wife at the time and say, I'm leaving and I'm not coming back because I can't be around it anymore. My goal is to get clean. And I walked into ARI, which was the Addiction Recovery Institute of Rhode Island, and it was an outpatient facility. And I remember walking in there and I took, the drug test. I went through the intake and they were just like, wow, there's a lot of morphine metabolites in your body. We're surprised that you're even functioning. Like you should be really messed up right now. And the case was I was just so far gone, but I was tired. And I was so tired of being sick. I was so tired of being ill. My beard's all messed up. It's always messed up. I was so tired of being ill that I just wanted to feel normal again. I didn't know what normal felt like anymore. It'd been years since I felt normal. And if you told me like this is what normal feels like, I'd be like, okay, cool. I don't remember that, but fine. And I remember my counselor telling me, and the reason why I'm making this video is we didn't have anybody that was presented to us as a speaker or a guest or anything like that had been through the program, actually made it and stayed clean. So it seemed like everybody was just kind of just revisiting again. They were just rotating in and out. They were called spin drying. They'd get clean, they'd go out, they'd get high again, they'd wind up back in rehab again. And it was just like a big round and round thing. And I was told basically there was a less than 5% chance of me actually getting clean, and like less than 1% chance of me getting clean and staying clean, and even less than 1%, it was like a 0.00 whatever, how many 0 1s it was, I would get clean, stay clean, and not have a relapse. So basically I was being told it was impossible. So, at that point I thought to myself, well, if it's impossible, why am I even going to try? And then the other side of me, who's very thick-headed and very strong and very pushy, says, well, I'm going to be your first one. Challenge accepted. That's just where my frame of mind was. And at the time, by the time I finally got to rehab, which was months, actually maybe a year after, I was trying to get off drugs myself. It wasn't working. I actually I hadn't known this girl. I actually started dating this girl, and she was on Oxycontin. So we entered rehab I went to rehab first. I kind of walked away from her. She called me, wanted help. She entered rehab, and we were both in this outpatient rehab together, which makes it even harder because you have two people trying to stay clean together. So I'm painting this picture because I want you guys to know what it was really like to be me, because some of you are sitting there right now if you're watching this. I hope that David actually presents this video to you so you can see somebody in real life that has been where you are and what happened afterwards when they got clean and the fact that they did get clean. That's the take-home message, right? That it can be done. And so we had everything working against us, at the time. And of course, her and I didn't make it, in the long run. We had very different kind of ways of dealing with things. And at that point, you have to realize that together as a team, you're not doing good. You need to separate and take care of yourselves, which was a very hard pill to swallow, no pun intended. So we embarked on this rehab journey, and methadone was what the rehab gave you. So I started taking this methadone, and you stand in line every day, early in the morning, about 6 o'clock in the morning. It's cold out in New England. You're standing 10-degree weather, waiting in line for your dose, and you go in there, and the nurse, you sign the book, and nurse goes up to your thing, looks at your computer, hits the button, it dispenses the amount of methadone for you. She hands you the thing. You take the dose, you give it to her. I said, bye, we'll see you tomorrow, right? And I think Amy was the woman's name. She was like the best nurse. I loved her. She was really pretty too. And so every morning I'm going to these things and I'm talking to people online, and they're still messed up and they're still on drugs, and they're having a really hard time to get off. And as you go get these things more and more often, every week you get drug tested. Now, if you pass your drug test, that's like you get like a merit. If you fail, you get like a demerit. It's like it goes in your file either way. Now, the more of these clean urinalyses you get take homes. So now I'd be able to go Monday through Friday and maybe take home one on Monday through Saturday and take one home for Sunday, so I don't have to go Sunday. You got this little lock box that comes with the like a combination lock on the front of it. And I had started going every single time I went. Every single time I took a drug test, it was negative, 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 negative. So every time you do better and better, they give you more take homes. They give you more responsibility because they figure you're working on it. They're going to reward you. So at one point I had 14 take homes, which is the most you can get, 2 weeks. So I only had to go back to the rehab facility once every 2 weeks to get the methadone. But I was still going weekly to my counselor. And this went on for a couple of years that I was doing this. And, my counselor, Peter Beihauer, was a former priest. And I never get the story as to why he left the priesthood, which it wasn't about him anyways, and he wouldn't make it about him. It was about me. And I went through a class with him, which is post rehab living and stuff like that. Me and my ex-girlfriend were both in that. And I went to this class, and eventually came time to leave there because I had actually met another girl. Me and my ex had broken up, and she had gotten out of college and was moving down to Maryland. And I knew that there was nothing really left for me up in Rhode Island. I knew that heading down to Maryland would probably be a better option. And I would be on methadone down there. It scared me to have to find a rehab facility. It scared me to have to think about getting my methadone down there. It scared me to be on my own, away from my family and the people at my rehab facility that were supporting me, with just on my own. Now I might be able to fail. So my counselor decided to suggest to me Suboxone. Now, Suboxone was something I didn't really know about. It was very new back then. We're talking about 16 years ago. I saw a psychiatrist, a psychologist, excuse me, and he put me on Suboxone. So I had 90 pills, so 3 months worth when I moved down here. So all I had to do was find a psychiatrist that I could see on a regular basis, and he would be able to fill my prescriptions for every 3 months. And it was even easier. You take a pill every day, right? Well, once I got down here, I, of course, didn't see a psychiatrist. I was down here for about maybe a month. I moved here in December, down to Maryland, and during that time, I started weaning myself off the Suboxone. I felt like I wasn't right on the Suboxone still. So I weaned myself off slowly, and one day I forgot to take the little piece that was on the counter. When I got home, I realized I hadn't had it all day. Not only was I not sick, but I felt okay. I felt a little off, like I was coming down with a flu or something, but I could still go to work. I kind of smelled funny, like my sweat smelled funny. But I said, you know what, tomorrow if I leave and I don't feel any worse, when I come home I'm going to dump this whole bottle in the toilet, which is what I did. I came home, I realized I could handle it, I dumped it in the trash, and that was it. Now, I have not touched an opiate or anything like that in 16 years. And there's been no relapses. No relapses, no thoughts of it. I've had 2 ex-girlfriends that had teeth problems. They had dental work done, and they got Vicodin. It was in the house. I had 2 ex-girlfriends that had breast augmentation. There was Vicodins in the house, Valiums in the house. Never, ever once was tempted, ever. Matter of fact, my wife now had some wisdom teeth stuff done on her wisdom teeth, and she cracked a tooth, and they put a post and all that shit in there. Vicodin. It's in the house right now. Zero want whatsoever. Like, there's zero pull to that drug whatsoever. And the reason why there is zero pull is because I'm so scared of withdrawals that I feel like even if I took 1 pill, at some point I'm going to be off and running, and eventually I'm going to have to go through withdrawals again, and that scares me to death. So, how is it that despite the scary withdrawals, which many of you would be scared of also, how do I continue to go about being sober and not relapsing and going about my life? And the main thing that I do is I tell myself that, number one, I'm never totally not a drug addict. Like, it's always there. You know, addiction is in the back of your head waiting for you to slip up. It's like that little voice. So I'm aware it's always chasing me, and it's always waiting for me to slip up. That's number one, right? Number two, I worked on the reason why I was taking the drugs to begin with. Number one is identifying the problem and working on it intensively. When I was a child, I was molested. And that was buried in the back of my head by my parents trying to bury it and say, don't tell anybody, we'll deal with it, and nothing was ever dealt with. That molestation led me to a place where I didn't feel loved. I felt like anybody could attack me. It led me basically to being a scared individual my whole life, since I was 11 years old or 10 years old. After this point, I was very, very unstable and fragile pretty much that whole time. When my cousin passed away, who died of a drunk driving accident, who was my cousin and my best friend, we went to school together, we took vacations together. He was my best friend. He was like my brother. He was my cousin. Once he died in a drunk driving accident, I went off the deep end. So I had 2 issues. One was the molestation, and the second one was my cousin passing away. After both of those issues were identified, that's when the intensive work began. And it was not easy. It was hard. It tore my heart out and it beat me up. And of course, there was many times that I wanted to give in, but I also knew that if I gave in, I start over again, right? So I would tell my counselor, I'd be like, hey, I'm feeling really edgy, I'm feeling really this, I'm feeling really that. What can I do? He's like, well, you're going to try breathing. They tell you all that same stuff, but it really boiled down to is making a decision, right? Once you are off the drug that you're addicted to and you're not going to be withdrawing, you now have a decision to make, okay? It is your decision. It's not an addiction anymore. People seem to think that the addiction now, it's always going to be there, but that withdrawal and that pull to the drug, once you're detoxed from it, you now have decision-making capabilities, and that's what you have to work on, your decision-making capabilities based on how you feel off the drugs. So you need to gain the tools to learn how to deal with things, which you don't have. Now, being on the drug, as long as you're on the drug for the addiction, you basically become emotionally shut down to where when you first started the drugs, let's say you're 22 and you get off the stuff at 30, when you're 30, you get off the drugs, you have the emotional stability of a 22-year-old. Like you haven't progressed. It stays there. So you're actually like a kid. And when you come off, You don't know how to deal with anything because now you're 30 years old. You're like a man child. You're trapped in you're a kid trapped in a man's body. So you have to realize the fact that, you're not okay to do this shit on your own. You need the counseling. You may to have an inpatient. You may need to live inside the sober living, whatever the case may be. But until you catch up mentally and emotionally to where you need to be, that's where those relapses happen. You need the tools to deal with things. If you don't have the tools, relapse will happen. So now you have, number one, identifying the problem. Number two, working on the problem. Number three, recognizing that emotionally you're not where you should be. Number four, working on those issues so that you can be emotionally stable, like working through things. And I think a fifth thing that I think is really important is to stay away from people that are actually using drugs, alcohol, anything like that. Now, just because you are a heroin addict or cocaine addict or whatever does not mean that you should drink alcohol. Okay? So a little story behind this. Now, I've never had a relapse with heroin or opiates or anything. However, once I moved down to Maryland, my girlfriend that moved down here with me, and we had a fight, and she was like, oh, I'm leaving. We can't be together. I'm like, fine. She left. The first thing I did was I walked to the grocery store, which they sell alcohol in the grocery store here, and I bought a bottle of wine, like 2 bottles of wine. And I started drinking the wine, and I was hammered by 9 o'clock in the morning. Completely hammered by 9. I was in the shower drinking. I was completely out of my mind. My goal was to stay home for the day, not train any of my clients. I'm a personal trainer at the time. And just drink myself silly and forget about what happened. Like, kill the pain. And my friend's girlfriend showed up, Darrell. And I let her in and say, hey, Darrell, how you doing? She's like, are you okay? Like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, and I'm drinking this, I'm like slugging this bottle of wine right in front of her, right out of the bottle. Now, Darrell herself had substance abuse problems. So she sits down with me and she put it in a way, like she said, hey, maybe you should, not drink because what you're doing is you're dulling the pain. You're an addict. And my answer to her was, well, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. I'm an opiate addict. So I'm not an alcoholic. I'm fine. Her boyfriend shows up, my friend, and he was like, why don't you just leave him alone? Like let him do his thing. He needs to be alone. So they leave, and it actually made me really think. Like, the first thing that I did was run towards alcohol. So I had switched one drug for another one and didn't realize that I did it because in my mind, I was an opiate addict and I wasn't a drug addict, right? I wasn't an alcoholic. I wasn't, whatever the case may be, right? A sex addict, whatever. And that really kind of hit home for me, which that was an issue. So I pulled back on the drinking and I drank less and less, and then I gave up drinking altogether in about 2009, I believe it was. I used to work at bars as a bouncer and stuff like that. Well, I gave up even the alcohol because I realized the alcohol was a crutch also. I was using crutches to get by my daily life, and I was tricking myself into thinking the alcohol was okay because it wasn't an opiate. Now, the alcohol, if you're truly not in control, because you're never fully not addicted, you're always going to be addicted the rest of your life. If you're not fully in control of yourself when you start with the alcohol, it's very easy to be drinking at a bar or something with some friends or whatever, and somebody goes, hey, I got a Vicodin or an Oxycontin, you want to pop one? And you're already drunk and you can make a bad decision, you pop the Oxycontin, you're off and running. So that scared me also. I was like, man, I could make a bad decision while I'm drunk too. It's not just killing pain, like this could be a bad decision. I had to pull back. So basically what I did was I really cleaned my life up all the way around. But first and foremost is getting detoxed. You need to be detoxed off completely whatever it is that you have an issue with. Then you need to look in the mirror and see who you really are at that point. Because remember, you do things when you're addicted that's not really you. Your thought process is not really you. Everything you're doing is not really you. I mean, it's you physically, but mentally it's not what you normally would do or who you would normally be if you weren't under the influence of that drug or alcohol. So, to me it was very shocking. It was very shocking to come to the realization that I had a substance abuse problem in general, and it was something that I feel was detrimental for me staying clean off opiates too. Now, for me, and this is not like this for everyone, I no longer actually wanted to get high when I entered rehab. I wanted to not be sick. So I was on heroin still, not because it was a fun high, because we know that addiction goes from all gravy and a whole lot of fun to just barely getting by to unbelievably awful and you can't stand it and you wish you were dead. Like, it goes through that whole spectrum, right? So when I finally got there, I didn't want to take the drug anymore. I didn't want to live that life. I didn't feel good about it. I didn't feel good I was sick all the time. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, this is it. Like, this is what my life is going to be like if I don't stop. But I can't stop because I get sick. And I tried everything I could. The detox just lasted so long, I would wind up going back. There was nothing I could do. I needed help. So the whole main thing was deciding that you're not going to and then getting clean. Like, you have to decide. Everything is your decision. Like, as a drug addict, I've heard many people put it as that it's a disease. Heard many people put at it like it's not my fault. And listen, we all make decisions. The first time I made a decision to stick a needle in my arm was a decision. No one forced me to do it. No one held me down. I wasn't peer pressured into it. It was my decision to put that needle in my arm. The first time I wanted to take a drink, it was my decision. No one forced me. It wasn't peer pressure. And I think a lot of people don't take responsibility for themselves as a drug addict. That's part of being a drug addict. You blame everyone else. Oh, that person upset me, so I'm going to go get high. Oh, that person, I don't like them. You know what? I'm going to go get high because they said something about me back in the day. Like, you blame everyone else for the stuff that's going on in your life except for you. It's not his fault you're going to get high. It's not her fault you're going to. It's your fault. It's your decision. You have to take personal responsibility for yourself. Now, please listen to me. If you're watching this, you're part of David's, Brian's class or patients or whatever. If you're listening to this, I am not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not someone trying to bend your mind and make you to believe things that are out of a book. I'm telling you from experience. I'm telling you sitting here as a person talking to you that I was addicted to heroin. I had lost everything. I had no money. I had nothing. I had to leave my wife and start over. Enter a rehab. Live with my parents again. Okay? This is what I had to do. And now, in 2020, the reason why Brian actually knows who I am is because of my social media following. Now, Jerry, why do you have a social media following? Well, I've gone out there and I've created my own businesses after starting from scratch, right? And building myself back up. I now own BioS3 Training, which is an online and in-person training business. I own GIFD Labs Supplement Company. I own the GIFD Labs clothing company, as well as the Ninth Life 2020, and as well as now as the Trend Killer Society, which is a new it's a clothing line, but it's a whole new movement. So there's 5 businesses that I actually own, which are global. Since I got clean, I have traveled the world. I have been to Australia. I walked in an expo at Australia and was bombarded by fans literally running up to me, taking pictures. Myself and Casey Mitchell, who is one of my good friends that I travel with over there for Primeval Labs, were bombarded halfway across the world, actually all the way across the world, because of things that they had seen on social media. Now, how many people do you know, right, that will tell you if you get clean, you can have money, you can have success, I have a beautiful wife. Get this, my wife is a CVOR nurse, cardiovascular operating room. She does open heart surgery. She does heart replacements. Heart transplants, not replacements, but heart transplants, lung transplants, bypasses. She's a RNFA, registered nurse first assistant. She's the one doing the surgery with the surgeons, where you stick your hands in there and pull the guy's heart up, and the surgeon does it. That's what she does. She's gorgeous. She's smart. She takes care of people. She's got a great career, and she supports me unbelievably. We have, our dog. We own our place that we live in. And this is not to be bragging. What I'm trying to do is paint a picture to you from where I came from with nothing, no car. I drive a Lexus IS250, which is not the most expensive car in the world, but it's a beautiful car. Like, we go on trips. Like, we're just getting ready to go on a trip in 3 weeks to Mexico again. Like, I can't explain to you. I've traveled all of those in probably 30 of the 50 states for what I do in the fitness industry. Literally, I've gone to California a million times, Texas a million times, Florida a million times. Like, I have traveled and met people and all these different people, and I've done it sober. I've never had a relapse, no matter how anxious I got, no matter how bad I felt. My father passed away of cancer unexpectedly within 24 hours of getting the notice. It absolutely crushed me. I didn't go near a drink. I didn't go near a drug. I took that hit and I dealt with it. My grandmother passed away. I watched her die of cancer in front of me. I've had other friends pass away. My friend Joe Pacheco hung himself. I got the call from his wife after I just talked to him a few days earlier. He hung himself. I drove from Maryland to Rhode Island with my 2 dogs in the back. I was single at the time, to be a pallbearer at his funeral. I didn't take a drink. I didn't use a drug. Everything that has happened, I have not taken a drink. I have not used a drug at all. Period. Done. I have gotten through all of it realizing that all of us are stronger than we think. And most rehab facilities don't give us a credit to understand that. And I don't understand why they don't have more people like me come in and speak to you guys in person so that you understand that you can do it. Because if I can do it, you can do it. I'm the average person, guys. You have no idea. I come from Warren, Rhode Island. Many of you probably don't even know where Rhode Island is. This is the smallest state in the entire country. And Warren is one of the smallest towns in the entire country. Like, I come from little nowhere, okay? I had so few options available to me. And not only did I make something of myself, but I was able to make something of myself after being addicted and getting clean. Very few people ever hear about that because they think it's not possible. I was told that it wasn't possible. I was told that this wouldn't happen for me. I was told like the best that I could hope for was to try to stay clean for long periods of time. You know, they never said anything about you'll get married, you'll have a success, you'll have businesses. It was just, hey, can we stay clean for 6 months at a time? Like, there was no real aftercare for like what happens 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now. Like, what happens? I'm here to tell you this is what happens. If you stay sober, if you stay clean, which you can, life gets better and better and better and better, and things grow and opportunities come up, and you understand people better. You understand things better. When you've gone through some kind of addiction and come out the other side, jobs are easy. Traveling's easy. Dealing with a significant other is easy. When you've dealt with addiction, there's nothing harder than that. Excuse me. I was a competitive bodybuilder for 20 years, a competitive physique athlete for 5. I'm now an NPC judge. I'm the one that judges the competitions now. This year, I'm being moved to head judge. I have just been doing more and more and getting better and better, and I'm the drug addict that no one thought was going to even live, let alone be able to do these things. Everything I've done, I have literally left everyone behind in the dust that was involved with that stuff. If you were involved with the drugs and stuff, it's gone. It's in my past. It's like it does not exist. Even my friends and family back home look at me and shake their heads because they're like, how the hell did he do this? Like, he was so far gone. How did he wind up where he's at? And they've watched it through social media over the years. Just piece after piece after piece of me just pushing forward. And the thing is, you can do this. I promise. I'm speaking to you from my heart. I couldn't put any more emphasis on this at all as I can right now by saying that you can do this. If I did this, you can do this. All right? All you need to do is make that decision and stick to it. If you relapse, you're only letting yourself down. You're not letting your counselor down. You're not letting your family down. If you hide doing drugs, you can't hide it from yourself. You're hiding it from other people. You're hiding it from rehab. You're hiding it from your family. You're not hiding it from yourself. Why would you not be true to yourself? I made the promise to myself that, hey, these problems are what caused it. When you work on those problems, excuse me, I have this sinus thing that's been kicking my butt. But when you have the issues that made you pick up drugs to begin with, or alcohol, and you've worked on those, and I mean really work and understand, and that's the problem. You have to understand why you're feeling the way you are. You have to understand what happened to you. You have to understand what the outcome is going to be. You have to understand what your future is. You have to understand everything. And once you understand it, you go, okay, I get it now. I was in so much pain that I just wanted to mask it. I was in so much pain, I just wanted to dull it. I didn't want to do it anymore. I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. But I know dealing with addiction is even worse. I don't want to deal with that. So let me deal with the original problems, which really should have been done to begin with. And it may not be your fault. You may have been young, and like I was younger, my parents didn't get me counseling or help or anything like that because they didn't think I needed it. They didn't understand. Sometimes people around you don't understand. So then it's your responsibility to speak up. Hey, I'm really having a hard time. Hey, I'm really messed up. And get the help that you need to keep you on track. You know what I mean? This is part of what you have to do. Humility is part of this. You are addicted to drugs. You are addicted to alcohol. You are an addict. Okay? And the humility of saying that to some people, they can't deal with that and it makes them want to get high. I walk around all the time, and if someone talks about like, oh, I used to be addicted to caffeine, I'm like, wow, that's I was addicted to heroin. And they're like, what? I remember my ex-girlfriend, when I split with her, and the next girl that I was dating, Amy, I remember telling her, like, look, I was addicted to heroin. I'm in rehab now. And she was just like, what? Wow, really? Like, I just don't hide it. There was nothing to be embarrassed about being an addict. There's nothing to be embarrassed about that something may have happened to you in the past that spawned it now. There is nothing embarrassed about that. There may be a chemical imbalance in your brain that's causing you to do these things. There's nothing embarrassing about it whatsoever if you don't allow yourself to be embarrassed. When you speak up about it and you own the fact that you're an addict and you are fixing yourself and you're past it or you're over it and you're pushing forward, you take the power away from what everyone else thinks. Right now, if you Google my name, Jerry W. Ward, bodybuilder, Google that. Look what pops up. All of the positive things pop up about me. I really don't think you'll find anything about the heroin and stuff, but I'm quick to be the first one to tell people I'm a former heroin addict. I'm a former opiate addict. And they look at me and they go, what? And then even my wife, when I met her, I remember telling her, like, look, you know, I was addicted to drugs. I was addicted to heroin. And I put it out there so that if someone right away says, well, I don't want to deal with this guy, it's scary. No love lost. That's fine. I don't want somebody to be involved with me for 6 months and then all of a sudden say, wow, this guy was addicted to heroin. I don't know who he is. Wow, it's crazy. I was only with Amy, Angelica, Carrie, and then Erin. So 4 women that I was with after I left my wife. Every single one of them knew that I was an addict. Every single one of them knew my story. Every single one of them knew what I went through. And I spoke, and I do speak to my wife still about when things pop up. I say, man, this is really this is frustrating. This is hard to deal with, and I say, not like, oh, I want to get high. I say, back in the day, I would have wanted to get high. But now I'm just like, I need to sit here and deal with this. I need to figure this out. And sometimes she'll help me figure things out. Sometimes I do it on my own. But the bottom line is, you have to check yourself. You have to be responsible for yourself. Responsibility, or self-responsibility is 100% a key. You need multiple keys to do this, but a key to this to where you can't blame anyone else. If you pick up and use that drug again or alcohol, it is on you. And that is the cold, hard truth. But I can promise you this, guys. I promise you from the bottom of my heart. I hope you listen to this. I hope you take this very serious, what I'm about to say. When you make that decision and you decide that you're done and you say, here's the issues, I'm going to work on these issues. And you only concentrate on those issues. Forget about relationships and forget about money, all that stuff. You need to work on those issues. Once you work on those issues, you have a comprehension of how those things played into your addiction and what they do, and you then learn your triggers and why you get triggered and stuff like that. And you start, the longer that you're clean, because you'll be working on these things, and if you're focusing on those, you're staying clean, you're working on them, staying clean, then you're really just ready to start your life again. You've had a period of time that was clean, and you've worked through all these things, and going through those things is going to be hard, and it's going to hurt, and it's going to be very painful at times, and then you didn't pick up because you stayed clean. Well, now when you're in the real world and you meet a girl or a guy or whatever, and they turn you down, you're like, hey, you want to go out this weekend? No. You're like, okay. Like, that's really not a big deal compared to going through withdrawals. That's not a big deal, compared to being addicted to drugs and wondering what your future is going to be, or not even knowing if you have a future, right? Or you and your wife or girlfriend or husband or brother or whatever have an argument, right? Back in the day, because of an argument, oh, he made me mad, you go off and get high. Well, that argument is not going to be as bad as laying on the concrete withdrawing from heroin for 12 hours. That's much harder than that argument. You realize that you just went through a boot camp for life. If you've gone through drug addiction, you have gone through a boot camp for life. And when you come out the other side, you can handle just about anything that comes your way life-wise if you handle that stuff and got clean and stay away from it. So it's kind of like a training for life, to be honest with you, and going through boot camp. And when you come out the other side, you're the same person. You're hardened, you're scarred, but you're a new person at the same time. I like to compare it to the caterpillar and the butterfly. When you wind up in rehab, you are a caterpillar, right? You get in there, you're a caterpillar. You're doing your caterpillar thing, kind of moving around, whatever. By the time you get out of rehab, that caterpillar is turned into a cocoon. You are a cocoon when you get out of rehab. And as you're working on your stuff and you're ready to enter your life, once you're done with all that intensive rehab and that intensive therapy and things like that, you turn into that butterfly and start your life. I promise you guys right now, when I got off the Suboxone, within 3 or 4 days, my hearing changed, my vision changed, colors were brighter. It was the most amazing thing. It was like I was living in a black and white TV that was on very low, and all of a sudden this thing turned into 4K surround sound, wraparound vision, IMAX. And the volume went, it got cranked up, and the color got cranked up, and you were like, you step back and you went, holy cow, like, what is happening? You realize how beautiful life is and why you've been wasting it. But I promise you guys, if you listen to what I'm saying right now and you don't remember any of this, just remember, you can make it and have an amazing life afterwards. I promise, because I'm doing it right now. And I would love for all of you guys to hop on a bus, come down here and just literally take you through my life for a day, to see what my life is like, to show you this is where you'll be. How would you like, right, to never really have to worry about paying the rent ever again? How would you like to never have to worry to walk in a grocery store and not be able to buy food or have to look at everything and add it up, right? Those are things that might stress you out, being an addict, because you know what? An addict, you don't have a lot of money. But when you're done out of that, you can create a life. You can create wealth. You can create stability. You can create all the things that people in the past told you needed to do. Forget all that stuff. It doesn't matter what people told you to do. This is your life. This is your reality. It's time for you to decide what you want to do. And what happens with the rehab is you learn different steps to do things. Steps, right? They teach you steps. Not necessarily the 12 steps, but they teach you steps. Well, when you want to start a business, there are steps that need to be taken. You take those steps and the business is there. when you want to start a new relationship with another person, right? There are steps that you go through. You ask them, you go on a first date, like you get to know them. There are steps. You wind up finding all these steps to life and this process that everything follows, which is very much a blueprint like you went through with addiction to get off of it. And you apply those tools to life. Next thing you know, you're walking in the grocery store not caring whatever anything costs and buying it. Next thing you know, you don't have to worry about the car breaking down to get you to work because you bought a car that's reliable and it's not going to. Right? You don't have to worry about finding a job because you have a job. You're able to sustain a job that makes you money. And the better you do at that job, remember, there are steps. You do steps, and you work hard in your sobriety. You work hard in your life. You work hard at your job. More and more opportunities open up your job. You climb the ladder. I promise you guys, I cannot stress this enough. This is how this works. It is not explained to you in rehab. It is not explained to you in outpatient rehab. It is not explained to you because I honestly feel like the people that do make it, it's a horrible thing to say. Many of them don't give back. Many of them just go on with their lives and they want to forget it happened. Or many of them are embarrassed and want to leave it behind them. Many of them don't want other people to know that they were addicted to anything or that they had to go through this fight. Many people just want to put it in their rearview mirror and not think about it ever again. For me, it's not just in my rearview mirror. It's in my passenger seat every day. Like, it's always with me. I make sure that everybody knows about it all the time. I talk to anyone who has the problems. I actually had more than one person contact me about same type of thing I'm doing right now with you guys. How do I maintain my sobriety? How do I do it? Right? The steps in the work, right? Now, granted, I know like right now you're like, work was kind of what got me into it. I really don't want to work that hard. When you're sober, you do want to work that hard because the harder you work, the good things happen. And the better everything feels. You feel better about yourself. You feel better about life. You do better. Everything changes, but it takes that first step of wanting to get clean. In the day that you want to get clean, that's the day you need to say, I don't want to do this anymore ever again. I need to find out why I did it to begin with. Once you figure that out, identify it, and work on that, I promise you guys, it doesn't get easy, all right? It gets easier to go through the steps, to maintain that sobriety, till you get to the point where it's an automatic pilot. But don't ever forget, I actually wrote a poem. Yeah, I wrote a poem. One of the few things that I've done that's so totally random. And I talked about climbing from the depths of hell. I was climbing through the depths of hell, climbing up. And all of a sudden I saw like a circle at the top, and a circle at the top, and it was like light. And I grabbed the thing and I pulled myself up through the top, and I pushed myself up. And I got in, all of a sudden the sun was shining and birds were chirping, and I was like, life. And I looked down, it was like a manhole cover type thing. I looked down and there was a dark hole, right? And in that hole there was two beady red eyes. They were demon-like eyes. That was my addiction. And what the addiction wanted was for me to go close to that hole so it could grab me and pull me back in, right? Because your addiction's always there. It's always lurking. We're always walking around that manhole the rest of our lives because our addiction never goes away. The goal is to keep our distance from the addiction, to do things that you know or not do things that you know are going to put you right back in that spot again. Walking too close to that circle, to that manhole cover, is going to put you back in there again. Part of your sobriety is maintaining far enough distance away from that manhole, but realizing it's still there. Many people that say, I'm a former addict, I'm not an addict anymore. No, you're always an addict. The addiction is always there. It never goes away, and you have to be aware of it. As soon as you think that it's not there anymore, it sneaks up on you and gets you again. So you're looking at the different systems and the steps that you take, but also being aware that that addiction never goes away and it's always there. In one false move, one step too close, and guys, trust me, it's not that hard to do. I promise from the bottom of my heart, keeping a distance from that addiction and realizing it's there is not hard to do. Getting up and focusing on your daily lives is not that hard to do once you've been through addiction. Addiction is hell. When I read the Bible and things in the Bible that talks about hell, addiction is the description, or hell is the description of addiction. It's one and the same. When you've been through hell already, there's nowhere else to go except forward or back to hell. Why would you want to go back to hell? Now it's a choice, like I said. So in closing, I know this is a long video and some of you may not even be listening to this anymore, but if Brian had wanted me to come down there and talk to you guys, I would be 100% open and coming down there literally and talking to you guys face to face and answering any questions you would have anytime, and I won't charge a dime for it. It's 100% free. Brian, all you got to do is tell me the time and day and how to be there, and I'll be there with bells on to make sure that any one of your patients or if you want to put them together in a group, all of your patients have someone there to speak from experience and give them a little bit of support and help that I don't think many people are willing to do or actually do. So in closing, again, this video wasn't for my regular viewers, but there are a lot of viewers that either know somebody who's addicted or they themselves are addicted. So I would appreciate if you guys share this video with anyone that you think might have an addiction problem. That's what this is for. And this video is going to go over to Brian, and he can share it with his patients and stuff. And if anyone else who watches this video, right, sees this video and says, you know, that might be a good thing to have Jerry come down and talk to these people about it. I've talked to kids about it. I've talked to adults about it. I've talked to just everybody from top to bottom about it face to face before. I mean, you name it, I've talked to those people before. And I'm willing to go out of my way. I think 2020 really should be a push to get people to see that sobriety isn't just something that you hear about. Sobriety is something that's amazing. And I'm speaking from experience. I did it. I came from nothing and made something out of myself even after being addicted, even after losing things, even after starting my life over. I'm still here, and I'm able to make these videos and tell you guys about it and hopefully inspire and motivate you guys to stay clean, because that's the goal. So I guess there's nothing left to say. So thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for watching. Please share this video and thumbs up it so it gets out there and as many people see it as possible. And anyone who wants to contact me, have me speak at their school, their rehab facility, their parents' bar mitzvah, whatever, you know, like their son's bar mitzvah, whatever, please contact me and let's work something out. Because everyone right now who's involved in addiction or knows someone who's addicted could stand to hear this advice and some of the other things that I have to say, even if they were specific to the person when I get face to face with them. So thank you guys for listening. God bless and good night.